Hello everyone, hope you're doing well, hope you can ask yourselves. As you can see, we are in a new place, which hopefully we're going to be doing some more recordings, and yeah, we've got two shots, because we're going to be trying something new this episode. But yes, we're back with another episode of So No One Told You. You know, have you ever been given the wrong advice, been told to expect one thing, and then experience the complete opposite? Well, we're here to address this. Each episode we bring on a guest speaker from Brunel, whether they're a current student or alumni, to discuss some assumptions we've had, or discuss things that we were told and how this was different to what we actually went through. But don't worry, we're not going to end it there and just leave you with loads of uncertainty. We're going to be offering some personal tips and advice that we've used or we think would help you, so you can learn from our mistakes and our experiences. So I always like to say, you know, with introductions, I can't introduce the guest speakers. I don't, you know, make it. I don't sell the passion, you know, sell the amazingness of them being on here. But so instead, I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker. So first off, how are you doing? And could you let us know who you are and what you do?
Hi, thank you for having me on the podcast. Hi everyone, I'm Zhauni Walker. I'm a final year psychology student. I'm in the final year of Brunel. Something about me is I'm passionate about social change and just supporting young people with their development, and whether that be high school students or students in university, I'm just interested in just the personal and academic development of young people.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, that's very important to what we do at Pick Up the Mic, because as you know, we're very passionate about encouraging students and young people on their journey. So yeah, we sort of started it. I've sort of like been forgetting it, so I haven't actually been keeping it up. But yeah, we started a thing where we would say, you know, something that we didn't know, you know, as a team or as a host. I'm not gonna lie, can't really think of one. So what I will say, you know, we'll throw one, I guess, linked to what we're doing. What we're doing here today is a lot of students who are going into master's courses. You might have applied for them. You might be doing one now. There are a lot of students don't know that they can do a placement option, because this episode is all about placements. It's you know, job hunting for placements, and a lot of students don't know that you can actually do a placement option with your masters. So usually it's done afterwards. Usually, depending on your university, you could even be doing a full-time job as your placement. But yeah, it's something that you can do. Again, it varies on the course in the university. But yeah, if you're interested, maybe you didn't do one for your undergraduate, maybe you did. Maybe like me, you want to extend how long you're at university because you're not really interested in getting involved in the working world just yet. Yeah, just check it out. Your course may already do it. But yeah, it might be something that you're of interest in. But yeah, like I mentioned, this episode is all about job hunting for placement. So we're going to start off, as you guys know, we have our assumptions, realities, and life lessons or pieces of advice that we'd like to leave with you. So we're going to start off with placements at the very beginning. So the first assumption I've got is that there's only one type of placement. There's not, you know, there's not this variety of placements available. Did you think this was the case?
I absolutely thought that was the case when I initially started Brunel, but thankfully I had the opportunity to go to a variety of different talks that placement students had previously been on, and a variety of placement students as well. So I was able to hear what the difference between a thin placement versus a thick placement. So a thin placement is when you do two placements throughout your time at university, and you have, I'm not really sure about it because it's not the one I did, but you do two placements, and it's really good because you have the opportunity to test different work environments and different workspaces. So for example, if you're interested in teaching and counseling, you get the opportunity to work in a school and work in a hospital as well. And something I did was enroll on the thick placement, which was later on in the year, where you take a full year out to work in industry for the year. And I think it was a really amazing opportunity. I know they also have the opportunity for you to enroll on a summer placement, but that's more likely something that you would do in between your years. So like if you finish first year, for example, in June or May, then you could enroll on a placement until September. And that's another option that a lot of people take on.
Thank you, Zhauni. Because yeah, that literally is the reality. That there are, and I will say, like, it is confusing, the names, because if you're a Brunel student, you know, there's thick sandwich, thin sandwich. Then, and like, what's funny is the acronyms don't link to that, because thick, you got full time, which obviously makes sense, it's FT. Yeah. Then you've got thin sandwich, which is, thin sandwich compressed, which is FSC. And then you've got thick sandwich, which is FSK. So clearly the acronyms maybe could be adjusted. But yeah, like Zhauni was mentioning, there are summer placements. They're usually done after your first your first and second year. So what happens is, rather than going on a nice summer holiday, for 3 months you have to work at an organization. You usually have to secure those before the summer, or as close to before the summer as possible. And it just has to be, I think, a minimum, depending on your course, but for my course, you had to be a minimum of 12 to 15 weeks that you had to do. And then you had to ensure that you would apply and find another placement for the following summer if you wanted that to count towards your degree. But yes, there's the other one, which is the full year one, which I think a lot of students go for. Like you, I wasn't planning to do a placement for my undergraduate. It was just a case of, I was just like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
It's a year one. It's after your second year. So rather than going to a final year, you take a year off and you work in an organization.
Yeah.
Again, depending on whether it's paid or unpaid, reflects on how long it has to be. But usually if it's paid, it's around 44 weeks. I think if it's unpaid, it's around like 30
32.
weeks. Yeah. So it's not, I mean, week-wise, you might think it's quite long, but if you think about like how long you're at university for, the time goes pretty quick. But yeah, it's a really good way for you to like learn about an organization. And I think, not trying to sell one more than the other, but the year one is nice because rather than sort of like getting in and out the door, you can actually like develop yourself for a longer period of time. But yeah, not to say that the summer one doesn't have advantages. I know friends who only did the summer one. I did one summer and a year one. So yeah, we will go into more detail.
I actually think that with doing the year thick placement is something that you should do if you're more assured with what you want to do after university, because it's one time in the one organization. Whereas if you're unsure, uncertain, and you want to explore your options and what your degree means to you, I think it's an amazing opportunity to enroll on the thin option if you know from beforehand, because it's harder to swap to thin once you've already started your course and easier to swap to thick. So I definitely think the thin would be great if you think you want to work with old people, or you work with old people and you're like, actually, I don't want to work with old people anymore. I want to work with infants. And then you go maybe do a teaching assistant role and you work with young people and you go, absolutely, this is what I want to do. And then you can say, okay, after my undergraduate degree, I think I'll do like a PGCE or I think I might do a master's in a certain area. So I think doing the thin really does give you that flexibility if you're unsure of what job or career path you want.
Yeah, definitely. And that links literally to the advice, which was think about the type of placements that you want to do. So I mean, also, I should have said it at the start, your course will limit you. So, like, some courses do have the flexibility of both. Some only do, like, year-long ones. But, yeah, think about what you want to get out of your placement. So, if your course is both, sort of like what we were mentioning here, if you feel that you want to take the time to truly, like, learn and develop, if you've not had any, like, previous work or, like, history, or, maybe you've never worked in a sort of job related to your course, go ahead, try it out, see how it works. But yeah, I think like you were mentioning, it makes the most sense to sign up for a thick. I think I need to make sure. Yeah, okay. I was going to mention it, but I can't because it sort of links to the next thing. Maybe I will. Yeah, let's go ahead. It's a nice transition. So yeah, the next one was you can't change your mode of attendance to add or remove a placement once you've sort of started your course. Yeah, we sort of answered it.
No, that's a great question, actually, because I was actually in that position.
Okay.
So when I started university, I applied for just a full-time 3-year course. First of all, I didn't know what a placement was. I didn't know what it was. And then I went into first year, and then I had a few friends that I had made, and they were like, oh, I'm doing a placement. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. That sounds fun. But still, no, like, I know I want to do my master's. I know I want to do my PhD. Why would I take an extra year to do it? So I didn't really see the advantage of doing it. But after COVID happened, I then had the ability to start thinking, like, what do I actually want to do? Do I want to go into third year? And after feeling like I hadn't made any friends because I literally had 4 months of university and I was like, shoved inside like the rest of the world, and I felt like I needed a little bit more career development and just a bit more confidence to go into third year. And I didn't actively seek out any jobs, which is the most interesting thing. It kind of came to me, which I'll speak about later on. So I think you can definitely absolutely change your mode of attendance. If you have applied to do the full-time, don't make that stop you from looking into other options, especially in the first year when you start going to all those talks and hearing other people's experiences and speaking to your friends, networking. You can definitely begin to see what the benefits might be. So yeah, that's what I'd say to that.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. The reality, sort of like has already been mentioned, is that you can change your mode of attendance whenever. So if you do want to add a placement, whether it's a summer or year one, you can. If you want to swap from a summer to a year one or a year one to a summer one, you can. If you want to remove your placement from your degree and just go into a full-time 3 years, you can.
To be honest, a lot of people did that in my year. Even the friend I said who initially signed up for a thick placement, she actually just did her degree for 3 years straight whilst I did my placement. I was like, oh my gosh, we could have graduated together. But she did that because it was really difficult during COVID to find any placements in mental health in the hospital. And as psychology students, like that's where most people want to do it. You want to be in the mental health, you want to be in the hospitals. So she just decided to just go through straight throughout. So I definitely think the circumstances will definitely play in how you might change what you do that year as well. So definitely, if you're not ready for the world of work, as Jeffrey said, extend it.
Exactly.
Do whatever you can to stay in university a little bit longer.
Yeah, definitely. And that links to the advice, which is basically if you'd like to change your course to whichever mode of attendance you'd like, speak to individuals who have done placements to find a bit more. If you've, like we said here, usually you have a talk from people in the years above that have done a placement who can give you advice, or you might know people sort of in other universities, other years, that maybe swapped and didn't do a placement. Speak to them about it, see what the options are. If you're unsure if you want to do a placement as well, it's recommended to speak to the PDC or the Professional Development Centre, because they will give you advice on all your career stuff. Which again, I promise I'm not planning this, because it sort of links to the next assumption, which is the university offers you no support. So this is in regards to interview practice, CV reviews, cover letter reviews, not advertising jobs, because that's going to be the next one. This university offers you no support. Is this true?
Absolutely not. I think, first of all, in psychology, which is the best degree, we have a module which actually gives us a lot of work experience and work context. So we had a seminar. It was seminars for psychology, and you go in and you work on your CV. You have the opportunity to do mock interviews, but not only that, if you get in contact with the PDC and your careers consultant as well, they have the opportunity for you to do mock interviews on, I don't want to say Sonar. It's a virtual interview platform. I know the platform you're talking about. I have no idea the name. But if you do the Brunel Plus Award, it's the software you have to do like the video interviews. Yeah. And it's amazing because then you get to record the content of yourself, and then your careers advisor would watch that back with you, give you feedback, and that will prep you for your interview to come. You can also take your CV, the job description, which is really important, so that they can help you to match the job description to the CV. And then they also guide you with writing cover letters. In addition to that, Brunel have a variety of workshops that they have going around, especially in the library and through the PDC Centre, that you can go to have one-to-one tailored support to enhance your CV, writing skills, confidence when you go to interviews, and anything around just being prepared for the job market. And I think it's amazing for you guys to take on the opportunity so that when you do leave Brunel, you do feel that you have that advantage. You can tailor your CVs to the job description so that you can be more successful with your job outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I feel like, sort of like what we were discussing here, there are a lot of students that don't even know like the PDC exists, or they're just like, the PDC is only for staff members because it's about professional development and it's their development, or even staff members sometimes think it's only for staff because it's to do with that. We said it here, they review CVs, cover letters, offer guidance on placements, give career advice, they can offer tips on like applications. So
careers advice.
If
you do not know what you are doing, like you don't know, okay, I'm doing a psychology degree, I don't know what I want to do. You know what? I don't even like talking to people. and that is not me. But if that's how you feel, and you feel like psychology is so much about speaking to people, go to see your careers consultant. There's so many different things and skills that you gain throughout doing your degree that will be transferable to other things that you might be interested, or roles that you might think this might be something that fits my personality, fits who I am a little bit more, and not just following the trend that everyone who does psychology becomes a counselor, because that's not true. It's really important for you to see what's out there and how you can make your degree work the best for you, and just being authentic to yourself as well during that process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think, I probably mention it almost every episode, but the person on the team, Samuel, he did psychology for his master's. He studied politics and history. I hope I got that right. But politics and history for his undergraduate. Like we were saying as well, like he just realized when he didn't do a placement, but he realized from like the work that he did, like what he was passionate about with psychology and figuring out like where he wanted to go. Yeah. So definitely do check out the PDC. And I think we mentioned it in the episode we did about job hunting after graduation, which we're going to be like, again, posting short snippets of that because graduation's around the corner. But yeah, like we said there, the PDC offer you support for 3 years after you graduate. So I know we're not necessarily speaking, it's not necessarily like you can't do a placement once you graduated, but there's still that support even after you graduate, and they're always tailored to your course. So they'll have like a background of your department. So whether that's they've worked in that field, they've, maybe they studied there, maybe they've, they've been they're an expert, or they've been a consultant for businesses who work in that industry. They will basically know what employers are looking for when they're doing job applications and cover letters and CVs and interviews, and the right things you need to say to sort of help you to get there. So yeah, advice, speak to the PDC if you've got any questions, queries or concerns about anything to do with applying stuff. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's that one. We're going to go on to the next one.
Yeah.
Which, as I sort of teased before, the assumption is you have to find a placement yourself, as in, basically, if you decide that you want to do a placement, the university says, cool, you've got until this date to find a placement, and if you don't, then you're coming back to your final year to basically do your dissertation. But yeah, so... we sort of teased it already, but...
you know what? I feel like that was kind of true,
It is, yeah.
Yeah, because you have to be autonomous in finding the job. So whereas your careers consultant might send you out emails with the weekly emails of what jobs are available in your sector, or what jobs they think might be interesting to placement students that are doing a specific subject, it's really important for you then to have researched the company, think, do their mission, vision, do they align with your vision and missions? Is it something that you're passionate about? And then going to explore different options. I think it's really important for you to do that and not just take on all the opportunities that are given to you, because then you just be doing something for the sake of doing it, and you're not really going to learn as much. You're not going to take away as much. In my personal experience, I actually didn't find my placement myself. I remember my careers advisor had weekly emails, which I absolutely love, to be fair, because it just shows you what jobs are out there rather than just teaching doctor or engineer. It's just, you could be a volunteer for this company, or you can do this, or there's this opportunity, and just seeing the variety of opportunities that are out there is how I found my placement. And initially, I wasn't even planning to do a placement, as I said beforehand. I was just going to do my 3 years out, master's, PhD, and I came across the email for CityA, which is the organization I'm still currently working for. I went and looked at their website, fell in love with their vision, mission, and values, and I said, okay, I'm going to apply. It was the only placement I applied for. I was like, because I really didn't want to do a placement. I was just like, I'm just going to continue. And after I got through, I was like, oh my gosh, I got through. And I was like, okay, this is the only one I applied for. Since it's the only one, I'm going to give it a go. And then that's when I changed my mode of attendance on eVision. It's super easy, guys. And then I enrolled the next academic year onto my placement, which I really, really enjoyed.
Oh, that's really good. And yeah, the little plug. If you haven't watched our episode with City Year, it will appear on one of the, I don't know which corner YouTube makes it pop up on. I think it's the right one. But yeah, it'll appear there. But yeah, definitely watch it. But yeah, no, I think that's true, because a lot of students... like for me, for example, both of the... So yeah, I said I'd explain it, so I'll explain it now. So I chose to do... So I swapped to do a year placement. One of the things I sort of found when I was like looking on... So is the reality that is here is that Brunel has a jobs board that showcases a variety of placements that are available to all students. If they are specific to a specific course, they will say in like the job description, we're only looking for like sports science or engineering students. But usually most of the time they're quite open. And a lot of the times the students sometimes forget some of those positions are at Brunel. So you don't necessarily, like if you were just like, oh, you don't really want to live away from home or you don't want to travel somewhere super far, Brunel does offer placements to students for like a year-long placement as well. But yeah, for myself, I applied for a summer one. So I didn't do one in my first year, mainly because I didn't even know what placements, like you said, I didn't know what placements were, didn't know what the whole process was about. But I was like, you know what, I want to try something new. So I applied for a summer one, and I got it. Again, it was like Zhauni was saying, it wasn't one that I found myself. It was one that was advertised to me. So I was just like, you know what, cool, let me apply. I did the interview, got to the interview stage, got the job, and then luckily, because there were two, there was one like in, I don't know if you know, but it's called Welwyn Garden City. It's like outside London. So I was just like, I prefer to do the one in London because Victoria is not too far from me. So yeah, I got that one, so I'm very excited about that. And then the year one, like what you saying, so I was looking, I was thinking, I need to find a year one that's related to my degree. I need to find one that, could like link with what I'm doing. I couldn't find one for that. So I was just like, I'll see how it goes. But I said, most likely it's looking like I probably won't be getting a year placement. Then it was by chance. There was this position at Brunel within the STEM team that do outreach to young children. And they apparently hadn't found a student that they were sort of suitable candidates. So they re-advertised the role. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I did like summer schools when I was at school. I did STEM programs. So I know like roughly like, as a student, what I would be looking for. So I was like, it's not really related to my degree, but I was like, let me apply. So I applied, I got the job, got to the interview stage, got the job. And yeah, like you were saying, it wasn't one that I sort of like found myself. It was one that like, it was only by chance that I saw the email and I was like, let me look into it. And yeah, I had those two placements sort of like back to back. So the weekend I finished the summer one, the following Monday I started the year one. So that was fun. But yeah, no, it was really good. And yeah, so that whole story was just about Brunel. While you do have to sort of like be active in like applying for stuff and tailoring your CVs and cover letters, there are, like I said, the jobs board, or you might get emailed specific like jobs from your placement advisor, or your career advisor, or your placement assistants, that will be like, okay, this is a job specific for your course. They're only accepting Brunel students, or it's only Brunel students and another university. Get on it and apply. So that links to the advice, which is, again, a lot of this is just speak to the PDC. But speak to the PDC if you have any queries or concerns about like looking for placements. If you haven't found one, or you've been applying for stuff, you don't get past like the application process or the interview stage, it might just be a case of like you're just not. It sounds really harsh, but I don't mean it. That you're not strong on certain things. So, for example, I know interviews I'm perfectly cool with. If you're asking me to like ask questions, like I do this already sort of with podcasts, so I know what they're looking for when it comes to interviews. I know there are some people that hate interviews. They would rather just do an application process and like a written exam, and that's cool. Me, I'd hate that. To do a written exam, like there's a reason why I'm taking a break from uni once I graduate. So I personally wouldn't like that. But it's always about like finding your strong suits, and your advisors can help you to sort of like figure out, okay, if the interview process or the application process is where you usually like don't get past, then maybe it's because you're including information that's not relevant to the job in your CV, or maybe it's because you're not actually, reading what they're looking for in the job description, and what you're putting in your like CV and cover letter is stuff that, it's great that you've got the skills, but it's not really relevant to the role. So like if you're talking about, I don't know, like administrative stuff, and you're applying for a position at a lab where you're going to be handling, I don't know, like chemicals and stuff. If you're talking more about, I've like managed emails and stuff like that, that's great, but it's not really relevant to what the company's looking for. So that's why I definitely, like we also mentioned about job descriptions, always save sometimes companies will email it to you when you're going for like placement interviews and stuff as well. Sometimes if it's one that the universities advertise, they'll usually have like a copy of the job description as well. But yeah, definitely make sure that you like do apply. You apply sort of through both to just make sure that everything's covered on that front.
Talking about the PDC as well, something that they will do is if you find that you're not getting past the assessment period or the first stage of the application process, is maybe just take your CV to them, take the job description, take everything to them. Maybe you're not using the right techniques. Like, for example, the STAR, that's the one. I'm thinking like 100 things. The STAR technique is a fantastic interview skill, but not only for interviews, to also write the paragraphs for your cover letter as well, because then it creates a really nice structure that you can flow. And a really key tip is to have once you get past the application stage, to have a copy of your CV in front of you. It's not against the rule. That way you're following the structure, you're saying everything, and you're ensuring that you are meeting the points that they've allowed you to go to the next process with, that you're ticking each box and you're saying each experience, how it's applied to the role that you're applying for. And I think that way it'll be a more successful interview. So definitely keep practicing interviews, even if you're just like going and reading questions and just bullet pointing 4 sentences of how you would roughly answer a question. Just doing those little things each time would make you feel a lot more prepared, especially if you go into a meeting with your careers consultant as well. Then going as best prepared as you can so that they can give you the best feedback possible.
Yeah. Mental health is really important to us at Pick Up the Mic, and we love to share resources that can support your mental health. And that's why we are so glad to have today's sponsor. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get you started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live appointments when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't right for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at an affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/pickupthemic. I've also linked them down below in the description. So again, that's betterhelp.com/pickupthemic, MIC, and start your journey today. So we've got one more. And now, you know what, annoyingly, because we had like with the whole setup of 3 different things for recording, you mentioned something and I generally forgotten what I was going to say about it.
Oh, was it the STAR technique?
Yes, the STAR technique, sorry. So it was even to say, like we were saying, it's good not even just for like writing cover letters and CVs. It is so for me, whenever I do an interview, it's very obvious, and a lot of employers know, especially students, you will use the STAR technique. But to me, it's a good technique. It's a good technique, and it's good for like making sure you stick to the actual like question.
Yeah, and I even say, even if you're not going STAR, doing like situation, task, action, result, you could just have 4 sentences.
Exactly.
It's supposed to say that you don't talk too little and you don't talk too much.
Exactly.
Have 4 points, 4 points, and tell me what the result of your situation is. Don't just tell me the situation. Don't say, oh, I observed. I supported 5 kids, and did they improve? What happened? Like, how can I know that you're a good support staff?
Exactly.
Along those lines.
No, it's the truth. And even like with the STAR technique, so with me, to make sure that I do that, I always say it. So like I'll say, so the situation was I was tasked to do from that my actions were this, or like this happened, and then the result of this was, because it is a nice way for you to remember in your head, okay, like I've gone through the list, and like what you're saying, it is like, I guess probably this makes a better unknown fact, but like a lot of students don't, it depends on the person. So that's why I I recommend that if you feel like you're comfortable or you don't really get really nervous at interviews and you want to do it, you can. But one of the things that my family told me when I was going for interviews is you can bring a notepad and pen.
Oh, absolutely.
Stuff.
Write your notes. You can take time.
Exactly.
Like, I feel like sometimes people feel so pressured to like answer the questions so quickly. Like, it's okay. You're not going to be rushed on how quick you do your work. You're going to be judged on how efficient you are, what your response is. And I think it's so important that you're showing people that you have the time to pause, not rushing your answer and then just spitting out and going off on a tangent. But you're trying to hit every point, and you're trying to ensure that each point that they've addressed in the question, you're answering, and you're being able to demonstrate that your skill set meets that requirement.
Yeah, and like what you're saying here, like employers don't really. It sounds harsh, but they like an interview is basically sort of. It's funny to say like a date, but what I mean by that is think of it like speed dating, that you're trying to like get the information across, and you're not necessarily trying to like what Zhauni was saying, is you're not trying to like chuck it out there and like be like, okay, so this is like, then no one's expecting you to answer the question like all at once, or even remember, because I know there have been plenty of interviews where you're asked like a 2-part question. You're given like a long backstory, and then it's 2 parts, and I'm just there like, so.
I will literally be like, can you repeat the question?
Can you repeat the
I have no shame.
And it's perfectly fine, because no one, like, it's like we said, like with work, no one's gonna be like, okay, cool, so I need you to do this, and this, and not be okay with if you were just like, okay, could you repeat it? Or actually, I remember the first part of what you said. What was the second part? Because it's that's just not how people work.
It's not. And again, they're not testing your memory. They're testing your ability to work, to think quickly. And you are doing that in an interview. You're thinking quickly because you're not spending hours writing your answers.
Exactly.
When we say taking a break to think about your questions, we're thinking like 30 seconds to a minute.
Exactly.
And I think it's more than reasonable. I think once it gets to like 5 minutes, then we'll start thinking, how prepared were you? But I think 2 to 3 minutes, get 30 seconds to a minute. Start thinking about the questions. Start thinking about how does my experience apply to this role? And a key thing that I've learned is it doesn't matter if you don't have an experience that relates to it. Think ahead. What will you do? So if something is, for example, how will you manage data in the role, or how will you manage your workload, and you've never had to manage your workload? You could say something that I haven't had the opportunity to manage my workload at work, but something I've done at university is managing my workload along with working part-time. That is a fantastic opportunity to demonstrate the skills and just to highlight that you know how transferable each skill and each thing that you've done across your time at university is. I think that will be great.
Yeah, and I think one more thing to sort of add to that is, especially with like interviews, I think more so than this is sort of like a 2-parter. So the first thing is with interviews, with cover letters, I think people sometimes feel like they. Like whatever they put in the cover letter is basically, it's like a test. So what you've put in the cover letter, you have to like verbally repeat for your interview, and that's not the case. And that leads to my second point of when it comes to the interview. So again, like I mentioned about the PDC, so when I was interviewing for my current job, what I did there was that the placement advisor gave me like a document that said questions that will be asked at interviews. So what are they looking for you from each question about, like, what's your strength, what's your weakness? Can you give us an example of something that didn't work out and how you overcame it? Can you give us something that you've led on a project or stuff like that? And what actually, because I think a lot of people sometimes feel like the question is what you're getting marked on, and that is not the case. It's always like, okay, so you said you're really good at data handling, or like even like with the strengths and weaknesses one, like people I think people have stopped because they've realized if you say an interview, I mean, if someone does, I'd be surprised. But the whole thing of like, oh, my weakness, or I don't have any weaknesses, or like my weaknesses, I work too hard or stuff. Like, no, because to people that, like, to you, it might sound really good because you're working hard, but to someone else, they can interpret that as, okay, so you're not really good at time management.
Yeah.
So with things like that, so even if you are like a really hard worker and you're not good at time management, you can say it, but then they don't want you to just like
say.
Yeah.
I always say use a star technique for your weakness. Like, honestly, I have, like, let's say you have punctuality issues. Not one of my issues, but let's say it is. And you go, you know what? One of my weaknesses, I would say, is punctuality. Sometimes I can be a bit late. However, after speaking with my line manager and previous people, I've been able to reflect on it and think about what I can do going forward. So I put a task to myself to set my alarm a little bit earlier, and I found that setting the alarm a little bit earlier, I'm able to snooze it. That snooze gives me all the gratification I need in the morning. And then as a result, I've actually found that I'm able to come 10 minutes earlier because I've set my mindset up a little bit differently and I'm giving myself a little bit more things to do in the morning. That would be a really good way to say that you're just always late.
Exactly.
without saying I'm always late. you're telling them that you're trying to do your best to combat and mitigate your punctuality issues, but at the same time you're letting them know before they've hired you that I might be a little bit late every now and again. Like, be honest, guys, but let them know what you are going to do to try and combat it. Like, if organization is not your thing, like say that you're trying to do your Google Calendar or you're just trying to do your to-do list a little bit more. Say what it is that you're trying to do to combat your weakness. We all have a weakness, so think about it.
Yeah, and it's literally that. Because there are so many times when like people, and like I luckily on my undergraduate placement was given the opportunity to interview for my position, so I saw how the interview process works, what they're looking for, and I think that's another thing. Whether you're on placement, whether you've graduated and you're in a job, if you're ever given the opportunity to be on an interview panel, it is a really great opportunity to see like what employers look for in the questions, because literally what we just mentioned, I always assumed, if someone asks me a question, they're looking for an answer. Like if they're asking for a time when things don't work out, I'm just like, okay, I need to give them that, but I need to show them, like, my answer is graded on how good this, like, I was able to turn things around or what lessons that I learned. Yeah. When actually, that's not the case at all. They have criteria that they'll look and they'll see and say, okay, cool, this person's like mentioned this, and this, or stuff like that. So make sure that when it comes to the questions and you're doing interview practice like that you sort of do that. The second thing I was going to mention is the tell us a bit about yourself. So to me, I always just talk about the stuff that I do. Like I said, I do the podcast because I love talking. So interviews are an opportunity to get engaged in that. Yeah. But my placement advisor, when I was looking for jobs, so he said what I did really well, or what people do really well is, he said always like end with something like really unique about you. So for me, that could be the stuff I do, pick up the mic, because most 23-year-olds aren't running a podcast network or don't have a podcast. He said there was someone that he was helping, and I think she was on a TV show, I think he mentioned. Like she like completely different to her degree. She just like was working on she took part in a TV show and film. And he said like having stuff like that is really great, because not even like, oh, it's gonna help you like get the job, but he said that to them it's really great to know more about you and what you do outside of work, because everyone especially like when it comes to placements, if it's one that's only advertised at Brunel for a specific course, you're dealing with all these other students that study computer science or biomedical science or whatever. And he said they will remember you by being the candidate that's got this, like who's got a social media page about mental health, who blogs about something, who does this or does that. Absolutely. Which sounds kind of harsh, but it is. I'm not saying like now you have to like line your like CV or cover letter or in interviews and say like, oh yeah, I've got like all this cool stuff that I do. But bring in your outside interest. So if you're interested in football or you're a part of a society, mention that there. If you've got like a position in a society, mention it there.
It's also a great way for you to show what you can bring to the company as well. Yeah. Like for example, if you're a dance instructor or something, maybe you could like say, oh, I'd be interested in leading a dance session as a work well-being session or something along those lines. Like it's a fantastic opportunity to bring your hobbies into work and to share your hobbies with your colleagues as well. I think is amazing. Like for example, one of my team members, he's into chess, and that's something he does outside of work. And now we work in a school, so he's now done an after school club with the students, and like got them interested in chess. Like that, I can't teach chess because I don't play chess. So he's had that previous knowledge, and bringing in your hobbies and just like fostering that love for other people as well. I think is like super important to just share what you're interested in, and never know, you might be able to like spark an interest in other people as well by sharing what you are interested in. Maybe it's like the books that you're reading. Exactly. It's just sharing that.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah, exactly. If you love reading, let them know like as of current, I'm reading this book and it's about this, or here's why I'm reading it. I'm reading surrounded by idiots. I won't say the reason.
But no, it's true. And I think a lot of students feel like they can't do stuff like that. And even the other thing I was going to say with job interviews is, so I didn't know this until my placement advisor told me this, and then the manager for my undergraduate placement told me this. So the reason why I mention this is she told me that she knew that I was someone that I wanted to work with from the way that I interacted with her. Now, I'm usually I smile. I'm a chill person. In interviews, like I said, as long as like I have a peaceful morning and I'm not disturbed, I'm chill. There are some companies that I think this is really interesting. That so that's what my placement advisor was telling me, that they will get in. So they'll ask the receptionist, how did the person interact with you? Was the person nice? Was the person blunt?
Absolutely, it's so important. The cleaners as well.
Exactly.
Oh, I hate people that are mean to support staff. Because it shows your character. It shows more about who you are how you talk to the cleaners, how you speak to the people who support, rather than how you talk to the CEO.
100%.
Because obviously you're going to be nice to the CEO there. You're trying to get the job, but how are you going to be with the people who are doing the things to make your life easier?
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And just being thankful, being appreciative of those people. It shows that you have character. You're a good person to work with, and that you're a nice person. Like, no one wants to work with someone that's just going to be hostile, shut up, or even closed-minded. You don't have to be an extravert to just have manners. That's a good thing as well. It's really important.
It's the truth. And even like with that placement that she like, that's, to me, is the quickest turnaround I've ever had on an interview. Because like on the journey home, she called me and said that she was offering me the job. And even afterwards, she was just like to me, one key part of the job was not only, like she said, you had the experience, that was great, but it was the way you came into the interview. You were like smiling. Like I think they were running late, so she even said like the fact that we were running late and you weren't like stressed or you weren't angry, like you were relaxed. You came in relaxed. You you were very calm. You had like stuff like that, which I'm not. I mean, I get. Like I'm not always that. I can get tense. Yeah. So, but it's about when you go into an interview, just relax. So I think for me, that was another thing. Sorry, that my placement, it depends. But my placement advisor said was, don't be on your phone in the reception area. Like when you're at the interview, he said as soon as you go through the door, that's when the interview starts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're watching you.
They're watching you.
I personally think that there's like a camera in your head.
Because honestly, like the amount of times, you'll be waiting in the reception area, even though they might ask the receptionist, how did you interact with the other candidates? So were you sort of like boasting about yourself, or were you like trying to like
network, get to know people?
Exactly. Yeah. So they keep like stuff. I'm not trying to like make everyone paranoid and say like as soon as you go into an interview everyone's watching you, but they do sort of like look around and like see like, oh, how is this person interacting in the space? How are they working with our colleagues and things like that? And like we said, like, okay, great, you're going to be really nice to the interview panel, obviously, but are you going to be nice if I don't know, let's say the receptionist made a mistake? Even like just going to the receptionist, are you going to come over and say like, I got an interview like at this time, like where am I supposed to go? Or are you going to come and say, oh, hi, how are you? Yeah. How's your day been?
Building that rapport from early.
Exactly. And it's just like simple things. And even like whether or not you get the job, people will remember you for that. And I know that there are people that are friends of mine or like friends of like family members, and they've said that like they've been recommended for jobs, or like they've been contacted for jobs even when they were rejected because of how they interacted, like we said, with the support staff. Even like just at the interview, just literally just talking at, with the receptionists, with cleaners, with, people just doing admin there. Not even the interview panel. They've just been told, we know that you had a really good, like, you were a really good person, like, you're really nice to everyone. We'd love to have you in a position in the organisation. We can't offer you this, but hey, look.
Absolutely.
We'll come back.
Really frequently, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah. Even if the position that you've applied for is not there, they might want to keep you around just in case that position does come around again. So they might give you another role. But don't be disheartened just because they're giving you another role. Do take it as an opportunity that they liked you, they were interested in you as a person, that you might not be the best fit for the role. And sometimes that is the case, that you might not be the best fit for the role, but you're the best fit for the company. Yeah. Like, you have an amazing personality. Like this, you are the persona of the company. This is exactly what we've been looking for. So ensure that you take that as an appreciative thing to who you are as a character building thing, because the job wasn't yours, but the company.
The company is. It's the truth. It's the truth. And people will be surprised, like how many times, like even there are companies both for placements and for like graduate jobs or jobs in general that will make a position for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're just like, okay, this person is really good. There are companies that also will wait for you. So like there are companies that, I don't know, you might have applied for it in April because you're looking for a job. Yeah. And then they'll be like, okay, cool. So we know that you're going to graduate in July, but we want, like, we have to have you. You are the best candidate we've seen. Like, you, like, we're really nice. We think that you'd be perfect fit for the company and the team. And they will wait. So I think even like with placements, even if you're applying like well into the like at the start of the academic year, like, don't feel like you can't approach these people. You know, I've said using stuff like LinkedIn, direct messaging people or companies that you want to work at, or if there's alumni at companies you want to work at, like, that's not an issue. But yeah, definitely do that. I've been talking for some time, so I'm gonna bring it back because I did mention this is the last one we've got, and that's basically, I think it sort of like sums up everything that we've discussed, because it's basically placements are a waste of time. Now, with this, I know this, you know, so no one told you, it's always about like assumptions and stuff like that. Now, there are people that will tell you that they've been on a placement and it was a waste of time.
Absolutely, there will be people who say that if they didn't find the right placement.
Exactly. And I'm not saying, and I agree, that placements are not for everyone. It depends on what you want to do and where you are when you're sort of at the stage of looking for placements.
Absolutely.
So I know, for example, we're talking from personal experience, I did not know what I wanted to do when I graduated. Like, I did environmental science. I was like, environmental science is quite broad. It's good because it means that I can apply for almost anything. It's got its limitations because then it means I have to think about like what actually, with such a broad opportunities, like what do I actually want to go into? So for me, placements were not a waste of time because it helped me to figure that out. But yeah, what would you say to that?
I would definitely say that placements are not a waste of time. As I said earlier in the podcast, I did not initially apply for a placement. I just went on with full-time psychology degree. However, after researching, because I knew I wanted to be an educational psychologist, and that's like my biggest aspiration from my journey. And I went on and I was looking at what the requirements are for educational psychology degree, PhD. And it said you need 1 year classroom experience. So I was like, okay, all right, one year. That's a long time. And they mean like full-time hours 1 year. Right. And if you don't meet it, then you need to have 2 years part-time experience. So I was like, okay, I'm going to, maybe I should think about this placement opportunity. And at the same time that I was researching and just getting into what my requirements might be for my next journey into uni. And this was in first year that I was doing all of this. Yeah, it was in first year. And I came across the fact that I needed my 1 year and City Year. And City Year was a 1 year in classroom, offering classroom support to young people and mentoring. And I felt that the mentoring aspect really fit nicely with my psychology degree. The in-class support fit nicely with the education. And I was like, this is educational psychology. Like, what more do I want? So I applied for it. And it was initially a volunteer mentor role. And I was like, okay, it's going to be super difficult. I'm going to have to like work a lot because volunteering is like, it's difficult. And I do manage the volunteers, and I do like sympathize with how much they give up to come on this developmental journey for the year. And they are serving for 128 hours in school a month, which is a lot of hours. When you think that at Brunel, we give you the Brunel Plus Award if you volunteer, the Brunel Volunteers Award. If you volunteer for an hour, 100 hours, you get gold. They're doing that a month, right? So they're doing that. They're doing a lot. So, thankfully, an opportunity came up for me to get a paid role, which was a leadership role that was in cooperation with NCS, which is a really nice opportunity. And I got that, thankfully. And I enrolled on that opportunity. It was a fantastic year of just growing my leadership skills, working and just managing people. The teamwork aspect, as I said, it was COVID. There was no teamwork during COVID. Like, the only teamwork that you had was online. So it was really nice to get out there, like start meeting people. I actually met like 3 friends that go to my uni, that are on my course, that were on my team at City Year that I had never met before. And it was crazy that we were in the same year, on the same course and everything like that. So it's a nice opportunity to meet friends. Now, you might not always meet friends on placement, but it's a really nice opportunity for you to meet friends who do different courses that you might not have usually networked with, especially due to the fact that I met other university students from different unis across the country. And it was just nice to hear what the different university experience is like. I definitely think placement is worth it. The amount of skills that you gain, you come back into final year feeling so prepared, not just academically, but you feel that your skill set has actually like enhanced. You feel like, okay, I now know what you mean by presenting, or I now know what you're expecting of me. Because beforehand, you might just think, oh, go up there and talk. Presenting is more than just going out there and talk. It's about how you're interacting with your audience, the eye contact that you're having, the content that you're presenting to people is so important. And these are things that you can learn whilst on placement, especially if you find a really good placement that supports the development of placement students. If you find placements by yourself, it might be like a job sometimes. And I think definitely going to find a placement that offers developmental opportunities that you can develop yourself is really, really important. Like at City, we dedicate the Fridays to just the young person's development, whereas Monday to Thursday, they support the student development. But it's also that dual benefit system of what are they going to get out of it at the end of the year. So I think that's something that we do really well. And I think going back into final year, I just felt like writing my final report was okay, was a lot easier for me. Doing the presentation was a lot better for me because I had the opportunity to do some like RED Talks, which is like a version of TED Talks, and just having the opportunity to just go out, speak, develop those skills, even just organizational skills, timetable managing emails and communication with different stakeholders. You wouldn't have had that if I just went straight into my degree as I thought I wanted to. So I would definitely recommend shop around, explore your options, and have a think of what you want to do next, because maybe the placement is the best option and maybe it will get you that step ahead. And a lot of people who haven't done placements might feel a little bit like unprepared to go into the working world because maybe you don't know how to manage your time, or maybe you struggle to meet deadlines. Whereas when you're working and you have that constant support from your line manager, you can work through those things and then go back into final year. It's a nice buffer. And then you can go into the world of work or into further education if that's what you would like to do.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, definitely recommend placements.
And I think that's true because the advice here was, the reality is that while it does add another year to your degree, you get a lot of work experience that you wouldn't get otherwise. And I'm going to tackle that from 2 points. So you get to know what you like and you get to know what you don't like. So sort of like we mentioned about the different types of placements. I knew from first year, I hated lab work. So I was like, I will not work in a lab. So I knew that from the get-go. I know that there's some people, depending on what course they're doing, they're just like, I don't really know. Like, lab work, there are parts of lab work that are interesting and things like that. To me, complete opposite. Even for my dissertation, for both my undergrad and master's, I was determined to not be in a lab because I hate lab work. So for me, if I was to work in I didn't, but for example, with the summer placement that I did do, it was really great to sort of learn about the work that I did there and to learn about how environmental things are tackled regarding planning permissions, how things are built in different boroughs in London, which was really interesting. But for me, I was like, this is interesting, but it's not my interest. So I was like, it's not that I would never, if I was offered that job after graduating, I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'd be like, sure, I'd look into it. But it was something that I knew long term I didn't want to do. There are some people that will go on placements and they'll come back and be like, I just I did it because I needed something to be done. And, I hated it. It was the worst thing ever. But even though it sucks, it is good because you get to learn what you want to. It's better to learn earlier that you don't want to work in a certain type of organization or for an organization early than you're there as a student. Because at least with a placement, you're out within a year.
Yeah.
If you're going back to university, so you've at least got, you've still got another year to look for new jobs or figure out what your plans are afterwards. Once you've graduated, it's a lot harder. And I think with my current job being based actually in the placements team, I think one of the things that I've seen, and like I said, I don't advocate placements because it's my job. I advocate placements because I've seen the benefits personally and with friends and family and stuff. So for me, when it comes to placement, my thing is it gives you, like you said, especially with a good organization that allows you to develop, you gain stuff that you wouldn't necessarily get from a full-time job. And I don't have the stats, but you can look into the stats and see that, if you do a placement and you don't, people who do placements are more likely to get a job afterwards than ones that don't. Simply being because if, like I said, you're trying to, when it comes to jobs, you're trying to stand out. You're trying to be that one person that's like unique or really cool. And if if there's two applicants and someone's just like, okay, cool. They both went to the same university. University shouldn't count, but sometimes it does. But they went to the same university. They studied the same subject, graduated at the same time. Even if, they graduated a year before. Let's say you're dealing with someone who did do a placement and they've just graduated, and someone who didn't, and they've been working different retail jobs and stuff like that. They will go for the placement student because they will say, one, especially if it's in a similar field to the job that they're applying, they'll be like, they've got that experience, so they know the systems. They might have gone away for a year, but they still know stuff. The argument with a non-placement student is that they'll say, okay, cool, the student might have still been working, but they haven't necessarily been using the stuff that they've got from their course or their studies in a field, in the field of their interest. So that's why usually what will happen is sometimes you'll find that students will go back, like we said, go back to further education because they didn't do a placement, they've been applying, they haven't found a really good job, so they said, actually, further education might help me and get a master's as well. So that's why I always advocate placements, because I say whether you do 2 summers, whether you do a year one, it is a good way for you to get into the working world. And also when you're looking for jobs, you've got a contact in an organization already. So it's not that you're I have to apply everywhere and I'm sending 3 CVs a day. Instead, you can just contact them and say, hey, look, so I'm about to graduate at within 3 months. Is there a position in the team that I was working in? If not, do you know someone within the organization that's looking for a student? I'm happy to work in these roles. I would be available from this time. Whereas if you if you don't do a placement and you've got a LinkedIn profile, yes, you might say that you've got connections on there that you can maybe leverage. But the thing is, it's when it comes to, like I said, with jobs, having every advantage is the most important thing. So having people that you personally know when you're applying for jobs are really good. And also, one last thing, which I've definitely found has been beneficial from doing both the summer and the year one, is references. So most of the time, organizations will look for 2 references minimum. Now, when it comes to employability, they're looking for ones of your employment history. So if you've never worked before going to university, they can't really give you a reference. Sometimes people will get in contact with their, especially
high school teachers.
Yes, with teachers, with lecturers, and that's great. They know academically or from your academics or your teachers and your lecturers, they know who you are, what you're looking for, the type of person you are. But if you've got that employment history, like I said, even if you do 2 summers and you do it in 2 different organizations, or even if you do a year one, you've got minimum of 1 employer that's different to someone else that's applying, because that person's probably got their 1 employer and maybe a lecturer or a high school teacher. Some students, if they do 2 summers, they've got 2 different employers and a lecturer. Some people might have 2 employers or 3 employers. The more employers you have, the better it'll be, because obviously the longer away you work to that organization, the less relevant that reference will be. Oh, yeah. So I've even seen that with how I've been looking for my next opportunities and things like that it's the exact same thing of you're getting asked, okay, cool, so we need these references, and I'm just cool, well, I do have these ones, but yeah, because I did a placement this year for my undergraduate, I did the summer one, I've now got a minimum of 3 different references that I can use when applying for jobs. So I definitely recommend that. I definitely agree that placements are beneficial, and like I said here, that the advice is that think carefully if you'd like to do a placement, whether it's a summer or a year one. I think a lot of the time people will sort of feel, like what we said here about I won't be graduating with my friends.
New friends.
Exactly. And they won't graduate with their friends, or, I don't want to be at university for another year, or, things will be difficult and stuff like that. But I think, especially given everything that's happened, but over the last 3 years, having every advantage possible when you're applying for jobs is really beneficial, because kind of we sort of mentioned it unintentionally, but you are dealing with, especially if you graduate this year, I think it's still pretty bad, but especially before it was worse, because anyone who graduated in 2020, and let's say they didn't do a placement, is dealing with, let me bring it back. Anyone who graduated in 2021, so literally the year that I graduated, they're dealing with the students of that year, that couldn't find a job and were working in other jobs. They're dealing with the other people that are graduating with them. And then they're dealing with possibly people from 2020 or 2019 that wanted to do a career change, or they were in a different career and had to then change to another job because of COVID. So you are dealing with almost 3 years of applicants. And I understand things have sort of like become a lot better since then. And, you know, like there's still quite a few jobs out there. But you always have to think of minimum, you're dealing with your year, anyone in your year who's applying for jobs, and maybe the previous year, maybe even the year before that. So that's almost like 3 different year groups that you're dealing with. And remember, just think, especially if you're...
More than one university as well.
More than one university. So even if you feel like, you know what, my course is like small, you know, there's only like 20 of us. Cool, you're dealing with 20 people at your uni, and that's not including any other university in the UK.
Let alone the world.
Even in the world. So having as many advantages as you can now are really beneficial for you to like develop and grow. So that's why I'd say really think about the placement. There is one thing that I realized we actually didn't talk about, and I didn't list this, and we actually spoke about it before, but it was about assessments. So the assumption is when you do, we sort of mentioned it, but when you do a placement, you don't have to like do any assessments. Some people will say it's like a break from uni. Yeah. Which, while it is, there are assessments.
There are assessments. But I think the assessment that you have to do is a really good assessment. It actually probably was one of my favorite assessments at my whole time at university because it was more like reflecting on the journey that you had taken and how you had developed as a person personally and professionally and how it linked to your degree. And I think it was so important to just have that reflective element. And I was given a top tip before I started, so I'll share that with you guys. The top tip is to take a journal.
Yes.
What I mean is journal everything that you do in your placement, because once you get back from your placement, you'll have to do either a placement presentation or a placement journal or both.
Yes.
And it's really nice to encapsulate what you've done by, if it's a weekly journal or if it's a daily journal or monthly journal, it's really good for you to have something that you can look back on and say, here's how I've developed over the time. Here's what I did. Because I think there's a section that asks you, what was your day like? What did you do? What was your structure like? And having just a copy of your timetable, having as much resources as you can throughout the year, so that when you sit down at the end of your placement and you're having that reflective time, you have all the resources. You can flip through almost like a little memoir of what your time was. And it's even nice to just, I actually have mine now, and I think I'm going to have it in the future because I'm a little like sentimental person, and it's just nice to just flip back and just see what you did, what my timetable was like. What I have a book of my to-do list, so I've had it for years now, so each year I have another to-do list, and it's just nice to see that how my days were in comparison to COVID. What my to-do list was like different. It's completely different. It was more like ensure that this timetable was done rather than like walk up and down the stairs to keep active. Because honestly, that was part of my to-do list. So I just think just going out there, having that world of work is undeniable.
With the assessment, it is quite it is very beneficial to you, and I think like what you were mentioning, that it is there aren't a lot of opportunities in university when you're given that chance to really reflect on what you've done. And I think there are a lot of opportunities at work where you have to do like appraisals or things like that, and you have to sort of think about, okay, well, what did I actually do? Or even if you're going for like, you're trying to argue a raise, like you have to think about how can I say that, you know, I'm a hard worker, I've done all of this and I deserve it. So I think having that experience with the placement report is really good because it allows you to like truly reflect. And like what you said, I think like to be like, I know like people might be like, oh, I don't have a notepad or I don't have a pen, but usually most of the time the organization will have like a stationary place, and they'll know anyways, especially if they've done placements before, that this student needs like something to document their journey. So I think like what you're saying, for me, I did it more for the summer one than any of the other placements I did, but the summer one, every day I would write, okay, this is what I've done today. And then just have like the journal from the first day I started to the last day I left. Because I didn't know if that was going to be included in my report or not. So I was just like, cool, I'm just going to document the whole thing anyways. Even for the like for the undergraduate one and for the one that I'm currently doing, for that, I just made notes on like, okay, so these are the things, like these are the big things that I think will be really good for the report to talk about how I've developed. So whether it was like leading events or networking with employers or contacting employers and things like that. So I think even as an individual, it is good for that. And then one last thing is when it comes to like your evidence and the appendix of like that is having that note is great because it means, okay, as soon as it comes to, you know, because people generally forget, and even, you know, I have to sort of figure this out now because I'm graduating. Once you leave an organization, your email and your inbox is shut down.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's a pain to get anything back.
Ensure that before you leave any job, you download everything you've worked on.
And because, like I said, for the report, you need to talk, like, it's great that you're talking about, oh yeah, I wrote this document or I created this poster.
But where's the proof?
But where's the proof? Show, if you've got photos, you can include that. Yeah. If you've got emails, like for me, any email that sort of like mentioned like, oh, you know, thanks for your help with this. It was really great that you did. Like, include that because one, it doesn't count towards your word limit. And two, it's a good thing to like show, okay, like you can say in your like text, oh yeah, I was commended by my director for the work I did on this event. That's great. But then if you can show like, oh, actually, I've got an email that's like, my director saying you did a fantastic job on this, like, you know, we saw really people engaged and stuff like that. Is simple. Now I'm not saying you need to go out there and fish comments from like your employers and stuff like that, but yeah, just look for like if you've got emails congratulating you or like photos of you at events that you went with your workplace, or you know, people I don't know, like
if you created like a display board, or if you like at the organization I work for, we do mentoring. So if you planned a mentoring session, take a photo of it. That shows that you've developed your planning and preparation skill, and that's something that you can transfer over. If you went on any group trips, trying to show team building, like you're going out of your way to foster that team dynamic outside of work, that's so important. I just think like definitely try and collate them throughout the time and not just wait until the end, because as Jeffrey said, it's so hard getting back those documents.
Yeah. Told you, new self. We're trying new things. But yeah, it works. But yeah, no, I think that's so true. I think when it comes to applying for stuff, like people generally forget that like these placement reports are one good, but you have to have that journey. And like I said, whether you write a diary on your daily, your weekly, your monthly experience, whether you like save every email that's like, you've got a folder and it's like proof of work, and it's like every email that's, you know, congratulated you on something, anything you've created, anything you've sort of like developed, like having that, because yeah, I think you will like, I think everyone says this nowadays, but it's true. Time will go quickly. And then when it's time for you to actually like work on a report, you'll just be like, wow, like, what did I do? And you don't want it to be that like just before, like, I don't know, you finish your placement, maybe you've got like a couple of weeks left before submitting, and then you're just like scrambling for all this information. You know, one of the things that I always like to include in my report is like an organizational structure. Now that, depending on where you work, is easy or difficult to get, but having like stuff like that, you can say that as soon as you get in, like, okay, so I'm gonna have to write a report. I just need to know like the hierarchy, the structure, like how's the organization, where do we sit, like do you have one for the team, like stuff like that, because yeah, you don't want it to be like the weekend or like a few weeks before it's due, you're like, I need to know this, and then, you know, everyone's on summer holiday or everyone's away, so you're just like, this would be really useful, but I can't include it because it's like I don't have access to it, or I've lost it because, you know, I've lost my access to my email. So I definitely recommend with the report. The big advice would be, yes, you do have to do a report. It is beneficial to you, but just make sure you're documenting your journey and you're being aware of like everything that you're doing. But yeah, all things must come to an end, and this is the end of the episode. Thanks
for having me on.
No, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you about job hunting for placements. I think we sort of like jumped into even like careers in general, but you know, it's good. It's good. And I think it's been really great to learn like these key tips that people can use. Thank you to you. Actually, no, before I say this, I was going to say, how can our audience get in touch with you? If they've got any questions, maybe it's about City, maybe it's about the work that you did, maybe it's about your placement.
If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can just find me on LinkedIn at Zhauni Walker. I'm going to spell my first name. So Zhauni and then Walker.
Yes, and it will appear on the screen because. Yes.
Cool.
Oh yeah. It'd be like a nice transition. But yeah. And thank you to your wonderful audience for coming back to another episode. If you like this episode, like, comment, subscribe is always appreciated. If you want to know when our next episode is coming out, then please make sure you click the notification bell at the bottom of the video. Finally, if you're interested in receiving some perks as well as supporting the podcast, there are 2 ways you can now do that. So by the time this episode comes out, you will have seen, hopefully already, that we've mentioned that we've got channel membership on YouTube. So you can become a YouTube channel member. You will be called Masters of the Mic is what we're calling them. So you can join that. I mean, we'll have exclusive episodes for you. You can dive into some of the conversations we have on not only this podcast, but other podcasts. But also, if you know about Patreon, we know that some people feel more comfortable with Patreon. You can subscribe to our Patreon page as well. But we're wishing you a great day. We're coming to the end, interestingly enough, of this series. So we'll see how things go. We've got some things in the works, so I won't necessarily confirm anything just yet, but just keep an eye on the space. But yeah, wishing you all a great day, and we will see you next time when we learn something no one told us.